important day. We're having our Progressive Church Network Victoria gathering. What did I say? Church Network. Yeah, thank you. So let me begin I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Today we do church on land that was stolen and never ceded. And the affirming statement: Hartwell is a fully affirming community and are fully committed to being a safe place for all people who are connected to this community, regardless of gender, sexuality, family background, economic situation, and regardless of how old you are, where you are from, what abilities you have, what language you speak, what religion, spiritual path, tradition, and ethical conviction. Everyone is welcome here, and we want everyone to feel safe here. And Caroline's going to come and light the Christ candle when she puts her cup of tea down. Thank you. So what I thought we'd do this morning is just start with some music. It's one of my favourite composers, Ryoichi Sakamoto, Japanese composer, and the music we're going to hear from him is called Aqua. So just relax in this time and just see if you can sense what's emerging for you as we sit together. And then I'm going to say a prayer about solitude, and then I'm just going to let us sit in silence. So over to you, Bo, if we could have that music. Prayer of Solitude. Help me, O God, to be a still access in the wheel of activities that revolve around my life. Deliver me from distractions, which are many, and lead me to a quiet place of devotion at your feet. Teach me there how to pause at more windows. I know I won't see everything, but help me to see something. So much passes me by without attention, let alone appreciation, without reflection, let alone reverence, without thought, let alone thankfulness. Slow me down, Lord, so I may see the windows all around me and the overarching grandeur of your image in the Sistine Chapel of the soul. And when you are ready, you might come back into the room. It was in my late teens when I realised I needed silence. I needed silence to still my mind, and I found that incredibly difficult. I meditated each day using a practice developed by Ainsley Mears in a book, Relief Without Drugs. Anyone heard of that book? Yeah, it goes back a long way, that book. But it was incredibly helpful to me. I didn't actually stick at it for a long period of time, but what it did was it showed me the benefit of meditation. And the older I grew, the more commitment I had to meditation. And as part of that, I learned to love solitude. I've done lots of retreats in my life, and many have either been silent retreats or retreats with a large proportion of the time has been in solitude. In the mid-2010 decade, I went to a 4-day retreat in Nowra in New South Wales. The first day was preparation for 2 days of solitude, and we were each given an acre of land in the middle of the bush. We weren't allowed to go into anyone else's acre of land, and there we were to sit for 2 days. And they gave us a series of practices to do during that time. And 2 experiences the first time I did that stood out. One was I was sitting on a rock having breakfast, and I was having muesli, and a muesli flake fell out of my bowl onto the rock, and I just sat there and watched 2 tiny ants trying to grapple with this rolled oat flake. And these 2 ants actually carted it away. And I just watched them do that, and it was just fascinating. So then I found in my bowl 2 muesli flakes that had been fused together. So I put them on the rock just to see what would happen. And sure enough, a number of ants came and carted off this rolled oat flake. And I was just fascinated. Like, I just had time to sit and watch it, and it was amazing. And, how the rolled oat flakes were much bigger than the ants. And they just worked their way through and actually carted these rolled oat flakes off. Anyway, during the debrief, after we'd finished the silent part, this guy talked about he slept in a cave. So he was lucky he had a cave on his on his acre block of dirt. And I've got a photo of the cave. So this is the cave. You can see it's a dark bit on the left-hand side in the middle. And that's... Sorry? Snakes. Oh, no snakes. No. It was all... Huh? No, it was October. So that's... So I went back the next year and I slept in this cave. Yeah. Sorry?
Same snake.
Yeah. And so if you go to the next slide, Bo, and that shows you the sort of bush that was around. Fantastic bush. And you weren't allowed to take any devices with you, but I snuck in my iPad because I use my iPad for journaling, and that's where I do my journaling. So that was thanks, Bo. That was one experience. I then went and did a retreat with an Indigenous elder in 2016. So I went to a place called Ross River. Ross River is just out of Alice Springs. And, I had really high expectations. There were about 10 of us. And I had really high expectations, going to learn all this stuff from this Indigenous elder. So we get there the first morning, he chucks us in his truck and he takes us out to this block of dirt. And we all jump off the truck expecting all this wisdom to come. And he says, so what I want you to do, I want you to go and find a tree. And I want you to sit under the tree. And I'll go and find a tree and sit under the tree. And then if you want to come and talk to me, come and talk to me. And I'm thinking, mate, that's not what I signed up for. I signed up for something more than that. But it was fantastic to be with that guy in that environment. And then we did some other stuff with him later on. But I think what I learnt in all that, and even in this retreat here, I love being in nature. It's where I connect. It's where I connect with myself. It's where I connect with the divine. And I think if you talk to a lot of people, even people who aren't religious, there's something goes on for you when you're in nature. And it was really, really good. I'm going to finish with some words by, and I've totally lost her name. Anyway, she's going to forgive me. What was the name of that woman I spoke to you about the other day? You said you'd read her book and... Yeah, anyway, don't worry. So I'm going to finish... Oh, here it is. Serene Jones. Yeah. So I'm just going to finish with her words and then we're just going to sit in a bit more silence. We're into solitude and silence today. So here's some words from Serene. God does not stay at a distance from us, but constantly seeks to transform our lives by asking us to awaken to the divine presence. God is a mysterious, creative, sustaining life force. God is there all the time. The challenge for us is to open our eyes, ears, hands, minds and hearts to receive the truth of God's real, persistent presence, God's grace. When we open ourselves to it, we are changed. The way we perceive the world shifts like a radically refocused camera lens, and we experience life differently. You see everything around you is suffused with God's love. You see God's grace everywhere, saturating all existence. This process of awakening to what is already true, but you haven't previously seen it, is called conversion. A word that literally means to see anew. So let's just spend a few moments in silence. When you're ready, you might come back into the room. So a couple of things. We have a technical issue, so that's probably why you're not hearing me speak through the microphone, but we'll get through that. Secondly, that's probably the longest introduction you've had to a service for a long time. But in a moment, we're going to have the shortest Bible reading you've ever heard. So it's to compensate for that. And Andy got the easy Bible reading, I've got to say, Andy. The only other point I was going to make is, so today's about the issue of solitude. I think I can't recall anyone in my life spending a lot of time talking to me about solitude in the church. So we're in for a treat with Brian today, so we're looking forward to that. Andy, it's your turn, mate. And this will take, 10 seconds, Andy?
Probably. Matthew 14:25. After he had dismissed them, he went up to a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone. Matthew 5:16. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. There we
are. Bo, do I need to bring a mic around, or should I just leave it if it's not working? Any thoughts?
For the people online,
they can hear it? Oh, cool. Sweet. I know not everybody is AFL fans, so I won't remark on Hawthorn's current form publicly, but since you're Mike, I thought I might. Yeah. And thank you, Andy, for that reading. I think Penny last week held the record for the longest official reading of all time, and you get the shortest one. Solitude and being alone. I'm not sure it's something we often talk about a lot. Certainly, back yonder in my Christian world, that's not something that came up a lot at all. And next week, fasting, which is even weirder. So it'll be an interesting 2 weeks together, journeying through that stuff. But we're in our journey through Lent, heading towards Easter. Towards the two most fundamental things, what it means to be a living organism, a life thing, and those things are death and life. It's the way life is. There's this constant movement between death and life, at least in this current aspect and experience of reality that we are in. Evolution evolves amidst this interplay between life and death. And it's unsurprising that there are two of the enormous and grand themes of our Christian tradition. So Lent is often about giving up certain things. Obviously, as I said a few weeks ago, you can't give up Lent for Lent. But it's often about giving up things, and we remember Jesus' time in the desert. Last year, we looked at power, money, and recognition, and seeking to learn from Jesus' time in the desert around those kind of themes. So as I've already said, this week we're going to look at solitude and next week fasting, both things that Jesus engaged with himself in his time in the desert. So they might be strange to some of us, maybe they aren't, but let's all come with an open mind. If it lands for you, cool. If it doesn't, that's also totally fine. When I use the word solitude, when John's been using it as well, I'm curious of what kind of reaction you might be having inside when you hear that word. I suspect a range of different experiences for us. And maybe it's curiosity. Maybe it's bewilderment. Maybe it's I just want to get to morning tea. Maybe it's even afraid of the word. Perhaps you've already zoned out. Or alternatively, you find yourself curiously zoning in, thinking that maybe there's something intriguing about this conversation that I might want to turn towards. Maybe you feel something in your body when you hear the word solitude that comes to mind. And maybe it's a good thing, but maybe it's also not such a good thing. So I suspect there's a range of experiences here, and I have all those different emotions over the years when it comes towards this word solitude. Maybe there's also a part of you that wants to say to me, solitude? Brian, do you know how lonely I am? Solitude is my constant condition. I'm so alone. Recent reports indicate that approximately 33% of the global population experiences loneliness. Though that varies by country. The survey called Hilda in Australia reported a steady rise of 8% between 2009 and 2021 of people who agreed with the following statement: I often feel very lonely. Some responses strongly agree have risen steadily by 20% over the same time period. Young adults, we often sometimes want to say, well, maybe it's just older people who feel lonely for various reasons. Young adults are particularly susceptible to loneliness. In the UK, for example, young British adults have emerged as the loneliest age group in Europe, with those in their 20s experiencing higher rates of loneliness compared to all other groups. Hugh Mackay, am I saying that right? I always get it Mackay. Doesn't matter? Thanks. Who said that? Andy, I'll take that. Bob, thank you. And I encourage you to read his book. Danny put me onto it, The Way We Are, that's just come out. It gives you a wonderful sense sociologically of what's happening in Australia. I'm only about 2 hours in because I'm listening to it in an audiobook. But I really recommend reading it if you can. But he's throughout his journey, all his books, he's extensively looked at this issue of loneliness, emphasizing the paradox of increased digital connectivity, which seems to coincide with heightened feelings of isolation. So although technology helps us with communication, he says it often lacks the depth of face-to-face interactions, which again kind of leads to the sense of disconnection. So loneliness is real. So I just want to name that when we talk about being alone and solitude and saying it's something we should practice and learn from, it's just worth noting that loneliness is real, and that some of us have too much solitude, and many of us not enough. So solitude for me is often not so much about being alone, but how we be or how we are when we are alone. And then one more point, sorry, that was a huge introduction to being alone. But one more point is worth also noting when we discuss solitude, because I think it's important, is that many people in the world are battling to put food on the table, let alone find time for themselves. In fact, finding time for themselves is almost impossible for many people. So it's incumbent upon us to continue to work for justice and to help as much as we can so that other people can live fuller lives around the world, so that loneliness can decrease in the process, so that people can actually find time for themselves in the midst of their crazy lives and the world that we live in. But even as we quest towards this justice that we want for the world, in light of what I've just said, it's crucial that we find time to go inward and time for aloneness. So again, Hugh Mackay, in his book, in some ways the book is a call for Australians to sacrifice themselves more and to give themselves more to alleviate many of the social problems, some of which we've created ourselves. But he says crucial to that is actually that you find time alone. You actually find time to withdraw, to kind of, to find the poise, the space, and the energy so that we can re-engage. He says withdrawing is not a bad thing when we think about engagement, right? So solitude. Jesus spoke about solitude. He spoke about it a lot, actually. Not as much as money. But he spoke about it a lot. And so just a few passages to remind us of Jesus' views on these issues. So Matthew 14, after he dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone. Mark 1:35, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went to a solitary place where he prayed. Luke 5, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places with snakes and prayed. Wait, I'm joking, there's no snakes. I honestly share your fear of snakes.
Just to see whether we were listening to you.
What's that?
That was to make sure we were listening to you.
Yeah. I could tell you so many stories about my fear of snakes. And I have a fear of flying, which you all know. And to think they've made a movie with snakes on planes. Like, there's zero chance of me ever watching that movie. Anyway, Luke 6, one of those days, Jesus went onto a mountainside to pray. He spent the night praying. When morning came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them. So again, sense of withdrawing when he's making decisions as well. And then Matthew 5:26, I'm not going to read them all. John 6 as well, about Jesus withdrawing. So it seems like all religious traditions actually seem to emphasize that spending time alone with ourselves is a good thing. But yes, sometimes we can do it to extremes. The Buddha was very careful to remind us not to go to extremes, and it's often spoken about as the middle way. So Buddha himself rejected various forms of asceticism, and in fact practiced it for 6 years prior to his enlightenment. I'm always nervous when you hear Maria, so correct me if I say anything wrong. But yeah, Buddha taught the middle way, which seemed to avoid both indulgence on the one side and kind of excessive self-denial on the other. Solitude in this framework is about not about renouncing all human contact, but about cultivating a peaceful and self-sufficient mind. Blaise Pascal, anybody heard of Blaise Pascal? Yep. So 17th century French philosopher. Thank you, Fiona, at the back.
He was a gambler.
Pardon?
He was a gambler.
Ah, he was a gambler.
Philosophical gambler.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Way did it God exist?
Thank you. That's it, yeah. I was thinking, I didn't know about his gambling addiction, but there you go. That would have really destroyed everything that I was about to say. But anyway, so 17th century gambler, French philosopher and mathematician, famously observed that all humanity's problems stem from man's, forgive the gender-neutral term, that's the way he wrote it, from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. So it always struck me, that quote, when I've heard it. It appears in the book Pensies, which is kind of collections of notes and reflections he made on human nature, faith, and philosophy. And one day I will tell you what he wrote in his jacket pocket, which is amazing, and he never told anybody about it. What? No, wait for that. When we get to Rapture 2.0 in May, we'll talk about Pascal's pocket. I only found it after his death, but anyway. So Pascal's remark around this about being in one's room alone and inability to do it is quite problematic. Suggests that many of the struggles and distractions people face in life come from a kind of deep discomfort with being alone in solitude. And so for him, the inability to sit still and reflect is a symptom of broader existential issues that we're all facing. People are often preoccupied with external distractions, so work, entertainment, social interactions, all good things. But the problem, though, is Pascal's suggesting is that there's a kind of a deep emptiness that perhaps many of us feel. And when we're alone, there's a sense that we might have to confront those deeper questions in our own lives, which is just damn difficult. And so we distract ourselves from our inner void and existential questions. And so the quiet solitude that he described might force a person to confront our fears, our uncertainties, the meaning of existence. And these are often uncomfortable truths, and we tend to go to external sources for comfort, busyness, entertainment, the approval of others, rather than trying to avoid our introspection. So it's a pretty strong critique that he gives. A quote from John O'Donoghue: "Solitude is one of the most precious things in the human spirit. It is different from loneliness. When you are lonely, you become acutely conscious of your own separation. Solitude can be a homecoming to your own deepest belonging. One of the lovely things about us as individuals is the incommensurable in us, In each person, there is a point of absolute non-connection, and everything else, and with everyone. This is fascinating and frightening. It means that we cannot continue to seek outside ourselves for the things we need from within. The blessings for which we hunger are not to be found in other places or people. These gifts can only be given to you by yourself. They are at home at the hearth of your soul. That's from Anam Cara. We are primates, we are social creatures. Many of us are extroverts. I come from a family of many of them, and that's also fine and good. But I still want us to potentially see the value and encourage us all to be open, at least open to experiencing solitude, because Pascal's solution was not to avoid it, but to embrace it as a way to deepen our understanding of ourselves and of God. Now, again, in our modern world, it's pretty difficult to find the time for this. It's pretty fast-paced. We're hyper-connected. But I still think in light of this, Pascal's observation is even more profoundly relevant for us. Constant barrage of information that gives us little time to think and reflect and be with our feelings and our thoughts. Another beautiful quote by John O'Donoghue: "Each one of us is alone in the world. It takes great courage to meet the full force of your aloneness. Most of the activity in society is subconsciously designed to quell the voice crying in the wilderness within you." The mystic Thomas A. Kempis said that when you go out into the world, you return having lost something of yourself. Until you learn to inhabit your aloneness, the lonely distraction and noise of society will seduce you to false belonging, with which you will only become empty and weary. When you face your aloneness, something begins to happen. Gradually, the sense of bleakness changes into a sense of true belonging. This is a slow and open-ended transition, but it is utterly vital in order to come into rhythm with your own individuality. In a sense, this is the endless task of finding your true home within your life. It is not narcissistic. For as soon as you rest in the house of your own heart, he says, doors and windows begin to open outward into the world. No longer on the run from your aloneness, your connections with others become real and creative. You no longer need to covertly scrape affirmation from others or from projects outside of yourself. Ouch, I'm hearing that for myself. This is slow work. It takes years to bring your mind home. The Sufis echo a similar thing. They say, go within, hear the story of the reed flute. It sings of separation and longing. Know that the key to knowledge is solitude and reflection, they say. Jesus needed to be alone in the desert. Jesus would seek to find times to be alone at numerous points throughout his ministry and his life. So being alone might be something new for us. So I want to suggest, just in closing, and then we're going to listen to a poem, some very practical things that we might all do, but I think would be useful if this is something that you want to think about incorporating in your life. So simple things that might help us spending time alone. Designate a quiet space in your home. So choose a space, maybe at your home or even outdoors, in your garden or somewhere else, that is free from distraction. So quiet room, cozy corner, spot in the park. But what this does is it signals to your mind and your neurons that this is a place of solitude and reflection. So every time you come back into that space, your body recognizes that shift. Try and minimize distractions if you can in those times. So electronic devices, unless you're John, you get a pass. Noise or other distractions. If needed, let your family and housemates know that you need some quiet time. It's not selfish, it's self-care. Often have to let my kids know that, and it's something that they've picked up as well. That I just need some time. I'm going to be doing this for 20 minutes, and And it's an important thing to do. Social media breaks, challenging, but see if you can regularly take time away from social media to reclaim personal space. Help us avoid comparison, information overload. Journaling, I know a lot of us journal. Journaling is a powerful way when you're alone to let your inner world surface. Consider keeping a daily journal if you don't. Use a voice recording if you want to do that. There's actually extensive research on the value of journaling for our mental health and stream of consciousness writing. So journaling helps us distinguish who we really are from the story we often tell ourselves. So it's worth doing. Other things, go for walks, be in nature alone. Nature's a refuge for us. And again, communicate your needs. And then lastly, practice saying no as well to many of the things that might demand your attention. Being alone is hard. Solitude can be frightening. Again, our modern world recoils at the idea of us being alone. So my invitation to all of us today is to just challenge ourselves a little. Again, notwithstanding the comments I made at the beginning about loneliness and people battling to find time. So what I want to do as a way of responding to that is David White, I think I've used a few times in the last few weeks. It's just play a poem of his. He's going to speak, as he always does, in his beautiful accent, which is a mixture of different places. And the poem is called Alone. So as I've said, I know I keep saying it every time I play a poem, particularly this one, it's about 5 minutes, so you kind of got to settle into the rhythm of it. Don't try to get it all. Don't try to understand it all. Let the poem read you rather than you trying to read the poem, or in this case, listen to it in the process. And even if it's just one line that kind of settles for you, just sit with that one line today.
Battery full.
Thank you.
Alone.
Hang on, got to do the Bluetooth, sorry.
I found two.
All right. Alone by David White.
Alone is a word that stands by itself, carrying the austere, solitary beauty of its own meaning, even as it is spoken to another. It is a word that can be felt at the same time as an invitation to depth and as an imminent threat, as in all alone, with its returned echo of abandonment. Alone is a word that rings with a strange finality, especially when contained in that haunting aggregate, left all alone, as if the state, once experienced, begins to define and engender its own inescapable world. The first step in spending time alone is to admit how afraid of it we are. Being alone is a difficult discipline. A beautiful and difficult sense of being solitary is always the ground from which we step into a new and contemplative intimacy with the unknown. But the first portal of aloneness is often experienced as a gateway to alienation, grief, and abandonment. To find ourselves alone or to be left alone is an ever-present, fearful, and abiding human potentiality of which we are often unconsciously and deeply afraid. To be alone for any length of time is to shed an outer skin. The body is inhabited in a different way when we are alone than when we are with others. Alone we live in our bodies as a question rather than a statement. To inhabit silence in our aloneness is to stop telling the story altogether. To begin with, aloneness always leads to rawness and vulnerability, to a fearful simplicity, to not recognizing and to not knowing, to the wish to find any company other than that not knowing, unknown self, looking back at us in the silent mirror. One of the elemental dynamics of self-compassion is to understand our deep reluctance to be left to ourselves. Aloneness begins in puzzlement at our own reflection. Aloneness begins in puzzlement at our own reflection, transits through awkwardness and even ugliness at what we see, and culminates one appointed hour or day in a beautiful, unlooked-for surprise, at the new complexion beginning to form, the slow knitting together of an inner life, now exposed to air and light. To be alone is not necessarily to be absent from the company of others. The radical step is to let ourselves alone, to seize the berating voice that is constantly trying to interpret and force the story from too small and too complicated a perspective. Even in company, a sense of imminent aloneness is a quality that can be cultivated. Aloneness does not need a desert or a broad ocean or a quiet mountain. Human beings have the ability to feel the rawest, most intimate forms of aloneness while living closely with others or beset by the busyness of the world. They can feel alone around a meeting table, in the happiest, most committed marriage, or aboard a crowded ship with a full complement of crew. The difficulty of being alone may be felt most keenly in the most intimate circumstances, in the darkness of the marriage bed, 1 centimeter and 1,000 miles apart, or in the silence around a tiny, crowded kitchen table. But to feel alone in the presence of others is also to understand the singularity of our human existence, whilst experiencing the deep physical current that binds us to others, whether we want that binding or no. Aloneness can measure togetherness even through a sense of distance. At the beginning of the 21st century, to feel alone or want to be alone is deeply unfashionable. To admit to feeling alone is to reject and betray others, as if they are not good company and do not have entertaining, interesting lives of their own to distract us. And to actually seek to be alone is a radical act. To want to be alone is to refuse a certain kind of conversational hospitality and thus turn to another door, another kind of welcome, not necessarily defined by human vocabulary. It may be that time away from a work, an idea of ourselves, or a committed partner is the very essence of appreciation for the other, for the work, and for the life of another. To be able to let them alone as we let ourselves alone, to live something that feels like a choice again, to find ourselves alone as a looked-for achievement, not a state to which we have been condemned.
Amen.
We gather together around this meal to celebrate and tell stories of our history as a Christian family. My mum, or Lady Doreen, as known by some. My mum was a lady of great faith. She walked with God each day, and she was full of stories of our family history. Mum and Dad were English. They met and married in Kenya during World War II. In 1948, because an aunt and my grandparents had come to Australia, Mum and Dad packed up my older sister and I, boarded a boat and came across the world to Australia, of which they knew very little, to live and raise us along with 2 more kids. For this, I am grateful every day. Mum found a church to join near our home. She made her friends mostly at church. Mum had 3 special friends that were her age, born in 1920. These ladies made a pact that to celebrate their 80th birthdays, they would go up in a hot air balloon. When the time came, because Mum had a dodgy back, the balloon company wouldn't allow her to go. Mum insisted the others go without her. So to celebrate her 80th year, Mum decided she would ask John and I to take her for a drive so she could camp in the desert and sleep under the stars. She didn't have to explain to her friends why. We travelled from Melbourne through Bendigo, Swan Hill, Balranald, Broken Hill, White Cliffs, Tibooburra, Nappaberry Station and the Burke and Wills Dig Tree, then Inaminka and down the Strzelecki track and home, travelling mostly on dirt roads through an arid country of Western New South Wales and northeastern South Australia. Mum slept in a tent from which she could see the stars and the sunrise each morning. This journey is a treasure story in my heart. In her faith journey, she wanted to be in the wilderness to pray and be with her God. This matches the Bible reading of Jesus going into the wilderness. We know many stories of Jesus' journey on earth, which should guide us in our lives. The most important story we share is the one of Jesus' last meal before he was crucified, for our sins to be forgiven. We know this story as it has been passed down through the years of Christians sharing the story of God's Son and God's love for us and his Spirit that lives within us. At the meal, Jesus shared with his friends and disciples. He prayed over emblems, teaching us to remember his love and forgiveness. On the night Jesus shared this last meal, he took a loaf of bread, broke it, and when he had given thanks, he said, "This is my body that is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, he also took a cup after supper, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this in remembrance of me. Whenever you eat this bread and drink the cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes, and pass on the story." Lord God, we give thanks for your stories. We give thanks for your love and your forgiveness and your Son Jesus. The bread is blessed and broken. The wine is blessed and poured. We take, eat, and remember. Christ is our Lord. Amen. Keep your stories and your God in your heart. Amen.
We've talked a lot about solitude, but my prayer is based on the second verse of that reading of let your light shine before people so they can see the good things you do and praise your Father who is in heaven. And I'm reading a prayer by Michael Morwood, who's a very good friend of the Progressive Christian Network Victoria. And here he goes. Let us come together as a community in prayer. As we gather today, let us give thanks for the human capacity, for compassion, for goodness, for truth, for ingenuity and courage. These noble human qualities enable and give rise to possibility, challenge, improvement and progress. We give thanks for the many people who have exemplified these qualities for us, people who have shone brightly in our lives, strengthening our minds and hearts and helping to reveal the way ahead. We give thanks that in and through these people we encountered the light and energy of the universe in human form. We bring to mind the light revealed in Jesus. His life was a clear and unblemished expression of the energy and light within every person. He acts as a mirror to us, that we might see ourselves as no different from him. He and we are expressions of the universal light, blazing in all places at all times. His desire was to set people free from darkness, from ignorance and from fear. He preached the possibility of a better human community if only people would recognise and trust the light that emanated from within and allowed it to shine. We too seek to recognise and trust the universal light and energy emanating within us and allow it to shine. We seek to be the salt of the earth, to be like springs of water that won't run dry. We desire to keep our own light on top of the lampstand, strong and bright in every direction, a light that will radiate in moments of darkness and gloom, infusing them with warmth and energy. We set ourselves to be productive, to be helpful, to be hope-filled, to do all we can to ease suffering and distress and bring hope to a troubled world. Amen. And while I'm up here, the news. The news is stay for lunch. We have a massive feast ready of pasta bakes of every variety and type you can imagine. And then afterwards at 1 o'clock, Brian will be presenting the first session of the Progressive Christian Network Victoria this year here, which will also be on Zoom. And Bo will be here to enable all that to happen. On the 5th of April is the Quiet Day, talking about solitude, a day for being able to practice some solitude in a supported environment. If you're interested in going, it's a Saturday from 10 till 4 from memory. Yep. See Meryl, John or Andy if you're interested in going, so they can sort of get the numbers nailed down a bit. Thank you.
So after I sat on the rock looking at the ants, I sat on another rock later in the day. And I'm just sitting there just quietly, and 2 lyrebirds flew in about 1.5 meters from me, and they just flew in and they played together for about 30 seconds, and then they flew off. That was amazing. Thank you for all those who have done some work this morning. It's really good. I'm going to finish with some words from Christine Walters Paintner, and then David's going to come up with Carolyn's accompaniment and sing our benediction together. So some closing words from Christine Walters Paintner. Holy source of silence, beneath the clatter and din of the everyday, you offer your mysteries to our hearts. You call us to pause, to slow down and listen to the true longing planted in each of us by you, a seed of holy desire. Support us in letting go of the inner and outer noise. Open wide in us a sacred cave for stillness, where we can attune to your presence. Enliven us with the gift of your sweet music and allow us to encounter your holy presence flaming in each of our hearts. Help us to catch a note of your song in the wind or in the voice of another, in times of sadness and in the rush of our lives. In a world so filled with distraction, we listen for your whispers, which call us to another way of being, and ask for the courage to respond to all we discover in this tabernacle of silence.
Love will be our lantern calling, love to shake and shatter sin, waking every closed, cold spirit, stirring new life deep within, till the quickened heart remembers what what our Easter birth can mean. Your lantern calling, love to shake and shatter sin, waking every closed, cold spirit, stirring new life deep within, till the quickened heart remembers what our Easter birth can mean.
Yes, I went yesterday, so it's going to be there till at least tomorrow. Yeah, you started today. You might come back and then go back again. Yeah, he loves his